Tonight, as you lie back, I invite you to drift slowly along the dusty floodplains of what is today Pakistan and northwest India. Imagine yourself there, more than 4,500 years ago, among one of the world's oldest and most quietly impressive civilizations, the Indus Valley people, who built whole cities from mud and fired brick, who planned their streets with mathematical precision, and who left behind 1,000 small clues but no loud proclamations. This is not the story of a single king or great battle. This is the story of countless ordinary hands shaping bricks, carrying water, tending livestock, and trading beads and grain. A story that survives, not through grand monuments or towering statues, but through quiet streets, lost seals, and the faint outlines of ancient baths. The Indus Valley Civilization, sometimes called Harappan, after one of its major cities, emerged quietly around 3300 BCE along the fertile banks of the Indus River and its tributaries. Here, the river's seasonal floods left rich soil behind, perfect for early farming communities. In time, those small villages grew into large urban centers, Harappa in the north, Mohenjo-daro further south, and dozens more, all connected by dusty roads and trade networks that wound far beyond the valley itself. Picture yourself standing at the edge of Harappa at dawn. The morning air is cool, the horizon just beginning to warm to a pale gold. The streets here are laid out in a grid, an astonishing thought, isn't it? In an age when many other cities around the world still grew chaotically, the people here laid out their homes and workshops with straight lines and right angles. The streets run north to south and east to west, wide enough for carts pulled by humped zebu cattle, animals that you can still see in parts of the region today. Take a step closer. The houses are made of baked bricks, uniform in size, about 7 by 14 by 28 centimeters, and carefully mortared. Some dwellings are small and simple, just 1 or 2 rooms, while others belong to wealthier families and have multiple rooms arranged around a central courtyard. There are upper stories too, and staircases made of brick or wood. Even now, with only their foundations remaining, you can imagine the quiet creak of wooden doors, the dusty footprints of children, the soft shuffle of traders passing by. One of the remarkable things, and perhaps one of the more boring details that says so much, is the drainage. The people of Harappa built covered drains along their streets. Wastewater from houses flowed through chutes or clay pipes into larger channels beneath the road. Some drains even had inspection holes. Imagine the care it took to lift those covers and clear blockages with tools made of wood or bone. In many homes, there were private wells. Some cities had hundreds of wells, more than any other ancient civilization at that time. Water, used carefully, used communally, used wisely. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the clink of terracotta pots. Pottery was a daily companion. Bowls, storage jars, small figurines. The potters of the Indus Valley turned clay on simple wheels, shaping storage jars for grain, small cups for milk, wide-mouthed cooking pots. Many were decorated with simple painted patterns, lines, dots, stylized trees, fish, birds. Some patterns were stamped using seals, small squares of steatite carved with animal motifs. Abstract symbols, and the flowing, still undeciphered script of the Harappans. You might pick up one of these seals, about the size of your palm, smooth to the touch. On it, an image of a unicorn. Not the horned horse of medieval Europe, but a stylized bull-like animal, its single horn curling elegantly. Below the animal, short lines of symbols, a script that no one has yet read. What did it say? A name? A mark of ownership? A blessing for trade goods? These little clay tablets and steatite seals were pressed into wet clay to mark bundles of goods, beads, cloth, grain, before they were loaded onto carts or boats bound for distant places. Trade was vital here, although it probably didn't feel dramatic. There were no vast armies enforcing borders, no towering fortresses, but there were bullock carts rolling over dusty roads and riverboats drifting down the Indus. They carried copper from the Baluchistan hills, lapis lazuli from what is now Afghanistan, shells from the Arabian Sea. Harappan beads, made of carnelian and faience, a kind of glazed ceramic, have turned up in the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia. Even the long-lost city of Ur, far to the west, traded with these quiet brick cities of the Indus. Food, too, tells a story. Farmers here grew barley and wheat, peas and lentils. They may have cultivated cotton, among the first in the world to do so, spinning its fibers into cloth using simple spindles. Herds of cattle grazed outside the city walls, goats and sheep too. In courtyards, people tended small kitchen gardens. Meals were probably simple but sustaining. Flatbreads baked on clay hearths, lentil stews, milk or ghee. And somewhere, among the dusty lanes, soft rituals unfolded. Unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley left behind no vast temples or royal tombs. But there were hints of shared beliefs. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, a large sunken brick pool lined with waterproof bitumen surrounded by small rooms. Was it used for ritual cleansing? For communal gatherings? We do not know for certain, but in its quiet design, there is a clue to how these people valued purity, water, and communal life. Listen again, in your mind. A soft breeze carries the calls of cattle lowing, children laughing, the rhythmic thunk of grain being pounded, water splashing in brick-lined drains. Small details, but they speak loudly of how people found ways to live together, to plan, to clean, to build, to grow. When night falls, the streets empty slowly. Oil lamps flicker inside houses. A watchman might pass by, staff in hand, checking the streets for stray dogs or cattle wandering into the drains. Behind closed doors, families gather. Perhaps they tell stories, stories that have vanished from the world except for these bricks, these seals, and the silence they left behind. So tonight, as you drift, think of these ordinary people. Potters, traders, farmers, brickmakers, builders. Think of their simple tools, wooden wheels, copper chisels, stone beads, clay pots. Think of their careful planning, streets aligned with the stars, bricks laid in neat rows, drains covered and cleaned. What happened to them? Why did this great civilization fade into quietness? What hidden pressures, climate, shifting rivers, trade routes lost, turn these humming cities into abandoned mounds? You may wonder, how does a city so carefully built become a ruin beneath the sands? What did the last family see as they packed their belongings and left? Did they know that their story would lie silent for thousands of years, waiting for someone like you to listen in the hush before sleep? You are still lying there, in that soft space between wakefulness and sleep, letting the ancient dust settle around you. The cool of early dawn in Harappa fades as the sun rises higher. And now you can follow the slow unfolding of a day within this city, brick by brick, shadow by shadow, until night returns. Imagine stepping carefully over the raised brick thresholds into a Harappan home. The door might be a simple wooden plank set into a frame with a rope handle, opening to a small courtyard where the hearth crackles softly. In this courtyard, a woman kneels, tending to flatbreads on a clay griddle set over a small fire. She wears a simple cotton garment, perhaps a single length wrapped around her body, her hair tied back. Nearby, a child plays with a small clay figurine, perhaps a bull with little horn nubs, or a human figure with pinched arms and simple lines for eyes. Above, a second story casts a rectangle of shade into the courtyard. The walls are cool to the touch, thick enough to keep out the heat, The bricks fired hard in kilns that glow at the edges of the city, day and night. Potters work there, shaping and firing storage jars and drinking cups, while thin threads of smoke curl into the sky, carrying the scent of clay and ash. Wandering into the street, you might see a man leading a pair of humped zebu cattle hitched to a wooden cart. The cart wheels creak as they roll over the hard-packed earth, leaving faint tracks. The roads are broad and straight, sometimes lined with shallow covered drains. Children squat by the edge, dropping pebbles into the water to watch the ripples spread, the sound of the plop echoing briefly in the quiet. Water was precious, but it was also carefully managed. The Harappans did not leave their waste to foul the streets. Instead, the drains carried it away, past the edge of the city, where fields and waste pits absorbed it, keeping the streets cleaner than many cities that would follow in history. There is a faint hum of activity, but it is not chaotic. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro feel orderly, almost deliberate, as if the people here understood that life could be more bearable with planning. There are no monumental statues, no colossal temples overshadowing the people, but there is a quiet dignity in the alignment of the streets, the uniformity of the bricks, the careful placement of wells at street corners. You could walk through the entire city in a day, past markets where beads and shells are exchanged, past workshops where copper tools are hammered into shape, past small shrines with terracotta figurines that might have been worshipped or simply carried for luck. Let us pause to consider the beads. If you were to walk into a Harappan workshop, you would find artisans seated on mats, leaning over small stones. Carnelian, a warm orange-red stone, was highly prized, and the Harappans developed techniques to heat it in carefully controlled fires to deepen its color. Using simple drills made of stone or copper, artisans pierced these tiny stones, shaping them into uniform sizes, polishing them with sand and water. These beads would then be strung together, forming necklaces or bracelets, traded across the city or carried by merchants down the Indus River and beyond. Let us pause to consider the beads. If you were to walk into a Harappan workshop, you would find artisans seated on mats, leaning over small stones. Carnelian, a warm orange-red stone, was highly prized, and the Harappans developed techniques to heat it in carefully controlled fires to deepen its color. Using simple drills made of stone or copper, artisans pierced these tiny stones, shaping them into uniform sizes, polishing them with sand and water. These beads would then be strung together, forming necklaces or bracelets, traded across the city or carried by merchants down the Indus River and beyond. The jewelry of the Indus Valley was not ostentatious, but it was beautiful. Shell bangles, copper rings, faience beads, glazed in a bright blue that still catches the light when found today in the dirt of excavation sites. Each bead tells a small story of trade, of taste, of the careful patience of the artisans who made them. In the hush of the workshop, you might hear only the soft scraping of stone on stone, the hiss of water over sand, the quiet breathing of the craftspeople. As you walk through the city, you would notice how the houses are built close together, but there are public spaces too. Large open courtyards where markets might have been held, and granaries where the city's food was stored. One such structure at Mohenjo-Daro is massive, a raised platform with the remains of brick walls, thought to have supported a wooden superstructure where grain could be kept dry, safe from floods and pests. Grain was a lifeline, and its storage was communal, reflecting a society that understood the importance of shared resources in times of need. Then there's the Great Bath, a sunken pool lined with bricks and sealed with bitumen, accessible by steps from both ends. It is surrounded by small rooms that may have served as changing areas, and the structure is carefully designed to allow water to drain and be replenished. It is easy to imagine people stepping into the cool water, perhaps for ritual purification, perhaps to escape the heat of the day. The water would ripple around them, catching the light, and for a moment, even in the harsh environment of the Indus Plains, there would be a sense of peace, of connection to the water that made life possible. Beyond the cities, the land opens into fields and pastures. The farmers of the Indus Valley grew wheat and barley, peas and lentils, and possibly rice in some areas. They managed irrigation with canals and ditches, diverting water from rivers to fields that might otherwise be dry. The rhythm of the seasons dictated their work, and the flooding of the Indus, while sometimes destructive, also renewed the soil, bringing fertility year after year. The farmers led cattle to graze, tended goats and sheep, and in some areas, water buffalo. Their lives were marked by cycles of planting and harvest, of tending animals, of grinding grain into flour, of baking flatbreads on clay griddles. It was a hard life, but it was also one rooted in the land, in the reliable cycles of the river and the sky. Trade was another lifeline. Merchants loaded carts with goods, beads, cotton cloth, copper tools, pottery, and traveled between cities or downriver on flat-bottom boats. The rivers were highways, carrying people and goods across vast distances. The seals, with their images of animals and mysterious symbols, were used to mark these goods, ensuring that trade could continue smoothly. It is possible that the script on these seals represented names or titles, or the contents of the packages. It is also possible that they carried prayers or blessings for the safe passage of the goods. We may never know. What is clear is that the people of the Indus Valley were connected to a larger world. Lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, shells from the Arabian Sea, metals from Iran, and beyond, all found their way to the workshops and markets of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. In return, Harappan beads and pottery have been found in the ruins of Mesopotamian cities, evidence of a trade network that stretched over mountains and deserts. Yet for all this connection, the cities themselves were peaceful. There are no clear signs of armies or warfare, no grand fortresses. While some cities had walls, these may have been built to protect against floods rather than invaders. Weapons are rare in the archaeological record, and those that exist are simple: copper or bronze spears, arrowheads and knives, tools as much as weapons. It suggests a society where conflict, if it occurred, was not the defining feature of life. As evening approaches again, the city slows, the heat of the day fades, and the air cools. Fires are lit in the courtyards, and the smell of cooking drifts through the streets. Families gather to eat, sharing meals of grain and lentils, perhaps with milk or butter from their cattle. Children play in the fading light, their laughter mixing with the lowing of cattle being brought back to their pens. In the workshops, artisans put aside their tools, covering their work to protect it from the night's dust. Overhead, the sky turns dark, and the stars appear, bright and sharp in the clear air. The people of the Indus Valley would have seen the same constellations you can see today, though their names for the stars are lost to us. Perhaps they too felt a connection to these distant lights, finding patterns and stories in their arrangements, marking the passage of the seasons by their rising and setting. In this moment, you can feel the continuity of life across millennia, the quiet persistence of people living, working, loving, and dying in the same cycles that continue today. The bricks they made still lie in neat rows, the streets they walked still traceable, the beads they wore still shining when unearthed by archaeologists. Yet, questions remain, questions that stir quietly in the silence of these ancient streets. Why did this civilization, so advanced in its planning and its quiet order, begin to fade? Was it the shifting of rivers, drying of the land, changing of trade routes? Was it disease or some internal tension we cannot see in the archaeological record? As the rivers changed course, did the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro watch their fields dry, their wells run empty, their trade diminish, and as they left, carrying their belongings down those straight roads past the wells and the baths, the granaries and the workshops, what did they think? Did they believe they would return, or did they know that their cities would fall silent, waiting for thousands of years before someone else would walk these streets, tracing their lives, and asking the same quiet questions under the stars? You are still lying quietly, the night cool around you, drifting into the hush of the ancient Indus Valley as the stars watch silently above. This time, we will walk together through the last whispers of this civilization, tracing how a people so quietly meticulous began to disappear, leaving only bricks, beads, and questions in the wind. When the rivers are your lifelines, any change can alter the course of a civilization. The Indus and its tributaries had always been both generous and harsh, bringing seasonal floods that replenished the fields, but could also sweep away homes and people in their path. For centuries, the Harappans adapted to these rhythms, building their cities on raised mounds, aligning streets to channel water, managing reservoirs and drains. The rivers gave them fertile soil, fish, water for drinking and for crops, and routes for travel and trade. But rivers are restless. Around 1900 BCE, the climate of the region may have begun to shift. The monsoons that fed the rivers might have grown less reliable, the floods less frequent, the waters receding from their courses, leaving the canals dry and the wells deeper each year. The once green fields began to brown at the edges, the yields of wheat and barley shrinking while the people looked to the sky, waiting for rain that came too late or too little. Imagine waking up in Harappa during these years of change. You walk down the same straight streets, past the brick houses and covered drains, but you see cracks where there were none before, weeds pushing between bricks, wells going dry, neighbors murmuring about distant places where the land is still green. The carts that once brought trade goods might be fewer now, the beads piling up in workshops with fewer buyers. Merchants may have taken their goods elsewhere, seeking cities where trade was still strong. It was not a collapse in a single moment, but a slow unraveling, a quiet fading of a civilization that had thrived on the steady rhythms of water and earth. The rivers, shifting courses over years, left some cities stranded while flooding others. The Gagar Hakra River, which may have been one of the lifelines of the eastern settlements, seems to have dried up, leaving the people who depended on its waters facing drought and crop failures. Trade networks may have faltered, the distant connections to Mesopotamia and Central Asia becoming harder to maintain as the environment changed and neighboring civilizations faced their own challenges. Without trade, the artisans who crafted beads, the traders who moved goods, the farmers who produced surpluses for exchange, all faced hardships. Yet, even as the cities began to empty, the people did not vanish. They moved. Some likely went eastward toward the Ganges plain, where the monsoons still brought rains, or southward toward the Deccan, carrying with them seeds, tools, and memories. They would plant new fields, build new villages, and continue living, even if the great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro slowly crumbled behind them. As you walk these streets in your mind, you might see abandoned homes, doors hanging from hinges, wells left dry, workshops with tools still scattered as if the artisans intended to return. You might hear the whisper of wind through the empty granaries, the soft rustle of leaves overgrowing courtyards, where once fires burned, where children played, where traders bartered under the hot sun. The seals, with their beautiful carvings of unicorn bulls and flowing script, lay buried in the dust, unread and unclaimed, their meanings lost to time. The great bath at Mohenjo-Daro, once filled with water reflecting the sky, began to dry and crack, the bricks loosening, the bitumen seal failing under the sun's relentless heat. What did the last residents think as they left? Did they carry the seals with them, hoping to use them in new places? Did they look back one final time at the city that had been their world? Or did they simply turn toward survival, focusing on the next field to clear, the next water source to find, the next place to build a life? The Harappans did not build monuments proclaiming their kings or record their victories in battle. There are no giant statues or pyramids, no written records of conquests or rulers. Instead, they left behind bricks, beads, tools, and the layout of their cities. They left wells and drains, granaries and streets aligned with the stars, hints of a society that valued order, cleanliness, and communal life. Their script remains undeciphered. It appears on seals, pottery, and small tablets, but without a Rosetta Stone to translate, we can only guess at what it says. Perhaps it recorded trade transactions. Perhaps it marked ownership. Perhaps it carried prayers or family names. Perhaps it told stories we will never know, stories of ancestors, gods, or heroes. Each symbol is a doorway left unopened, waiting for the day when we might understand the words of a people who lived thousands of years ago. Archaeologists have uncovered small figurines of women, perhaps goddesses or fertility symbols, of animals, of carts and houses. They have found tools for farming and for craft, evidence of copper smelting, pottery kilns, and bead-making workshops. Each artifact is a fragment of daily life, ordinary but deeply human, reminding us that history is often made not by grand gestures, but by countless small actions repeated over generations. They also left us their urban planning, the aligned streets, the uniform bricks, the covered drains, showing a society that valued structure, hygiene, and civic organization. These details, while mundane, speak of a people who believed in the comfort of order, in the dignity of a clean street, in the necessity of public water access. And so, as you lie quietly, you might feel a sense of calm, knowing that even in the distant past, people sought comfort and stability, cared for their families, and tried to make their lives better, one brick, one bead, one seed at a time. As we conclude our slow walk through the Indus Valley, let us remember that history is not only the story of emperors and wars, but of farmers planting wheat by hand, of artisans drilling beads over slow days, of families sharing meals by oil lamps, and of children watching stars in a night sky no different from the one you see now. We often think of the end of a civilization as a disaster, but perhaps it was simply a transition. The Harappan people did not disappear. They adapted, moved, and continued to live. Their legacy lived on in the technologies they shared, the seeds they planted in new soils, and the quiet values they passed down, of clean water, of careful planning, of respecting the flows of nature. Tonight, as you drift further into rest, consider how even in its fading, the Indus Valley civilization left behind lessons in resilience, patience, and adaptation. When water grows scarce, find new ways to manage it. When trade routes close, create new connections. When the world changes, change with it. And let your final thoughts before sleep be of the quiet dignity of a people who built their lives in the slow rhythms of the river, who moved with the seasons, who left behind bricks and beads to tell us that they were here, and that in their quiet, they shaped the world in ways that still ripple through time.